My name is Zhao, the only female general in the great Xia dynasty. I was 19 when I died. I died in the coldest winter in the northern frontier, upon the walls of a lonely city I had defended for 3 days. Below the wall lay a mountain of enemy corpses and the loyal souls of my 3,000 black armor troops. On the wall, only I remained, riddled with arrows, like a broken scarecrow. In the distance, from the direction of the capital, I could faintly hear the sounds of celebration and bells. I knew it was my emperor, the man I had loved my entire life. Xiao marrying his beloved, the prime minister's noble daughter, Meng Wansheng. In the swirling snow, I seemed to see the newlywed imperial couple, in their fiery red wedding robes, accepting the prostrations of the court and the blessings of the people. He had finally become the ruler of the world, with the most suitable woman by his side. How wonderful. I had eliminated the last of the rebellious warlords for him, cleared the path of his brothers who coveted the throne, and guarded this crumbling nation's gates. I once thought that my unwavering loyalty, my brushes with death, would earn me the promise he had made. When I rule the world, I will make you my empress. It turned out to be nothing but a wishful dream. The dream was over. My blood had run dry. In the final moments of my consciousness, I looked toward the capital and smiled faintly. Xiao, in this life, I return my life to you, and I return this empire to you. If there is a next life, I only wish that we will never meet again. When I opened my eyes again, I smelled the thick scent of blood and the fragrance of the earth. Not the cold of snow, but the warmth of a humid summer wind. I sat up abruptly and found myself in a clearing in a dense forest. Not far away, the bodies of several black-clad assassins were strewn about. A young man in brocade robes was leaning weakly against a large tree, a deep bone-visible wound on his chest, his face as pale as paper. When he saw me wake, a flicker of vigilance and caution crossed his eyes, and he tightened his grip on the longsword beside him. "Who are you?" His voice was hoarse from weakness, but the innate nobility and coldness in it were so familiar that my heart stopped. It was Xiao. The 16-year-old Xiao looked down at my hands, slender and fair, without the thick calluses from years of holding a spear. I was wearing a practical hunting outfit, the style my father used to love to have made for me when he was still alive. I had been reborn on the day we first met. On this day in my previous life, as the young lady of the general of the North's residence, I had been hunting on the western mountain with my guards when I stumbled upon the third prince, Xiao being pursued by assassins sent by the first prince. I had practiced martial arts since I was a child, the blood of a general flowing in my veins. Seeing this, I had not hesitated to intervene. In that battle, most of my guards had died, and I myself was seriously injured. But it was this heroine saving the hero that had won me a place in his heart, and started my life of fighting for him, a life that ended in tragedy. He looked at me, waiting for my answer. In my past life, I remembered how I had proudly announced my name, Zhao, of the general of the North's residence, and how, as I bandaged his wound, he had gazed at me with those deep, star-like eyes and whispered, "Zhao, I will remember you. For saving my life today, I will surely repay you in the future." His repayment was to marry another while I guarded the nation's gates for him, leaving me to die on a city wall. At this thought, the dead ashes in my heart seemed to be reignited by hatred, searing my insides. I slowly stood up, brushed the dirt from my clothes, and without another glance at him, turned to leave. "Stop." His voice was a mixture of surprise and command. "I asked you a question. Who are you?" I did not stop. "You saved me. Why are you leaving without a word? What reward do you want? Gold, silver, jewels, an official post, a title? Just ask, and I will." Before he could finish, I stopped, turned, and gave him a cold look. "I saved you," I scoffed, my voice a coldness that was foreign even to me. "I believe you are mistaken." I picked up a stone and threw it at a rabbit foraging nearby. The stone flew through the air and struck the rabbit with precision. It twitched a couple of times and then was still. I pointed to the rabbit, then to the bodies of the assassins on the ground, my tone flat. I was just hunting. These people got in my way and scared off my prey, so I dealt with them. As for you, my gaze fell on his astonished face. What have you to do with me? With that, I ignored the spectacular expression on his face, walked to the dead rabbit, picked it up, and disappeared into the woods. Xiaoju, in this life, I will not save you. Your empire, your throne, your life and death have nothing to do with me, Yi Zhao, anymore. I just want to take my family, stay away from the court, away from the conflict, and live in peace. The first thing I did when I returned to the General of the North's residence was to see my father. Me father, Yao Shaoshan, the god of war of Great Sha, was not yet the tragic old general who would be implicated in my insistence on following Xiao Wei and die in battle. He was still full of spirit, a formidable figure. When he saw me come in with the rabbit, he laughed heartily. My Zhaoer, your archery has improved again. I put down the rabbit and knelt before him. Father, he was taken aback by my action and quickly helped me up. What is this? Did someone bully you? I shook my head and looked up at him, my eyes welling up. In my past life, I had argued with him countless times for Xiaozhe. He did not support a girl like me going to war, nor did he have any faith in the unsupported third prince. But I was blinded by so-called love, and in my stubbornness had led him to his death. Father, I have thought it through, I said, taking a deep breath. I no longer want to wield swords and spears, nor do I want to marry into a noble family. I just want to stay by your side and mother's, and live a peaceful life. My father was stunned. Then his eyes filled with immense joy. He had always worried that my strong-willed nature would make it difficult for me to marry, and he feared I would follow in his footsteps, a life of endless war with a tragic end. Good, good, he said. Good 3 times, excitedly patting my shoulder. My daughter, even if you are not a general, you can live better than anyone. Whatever you want to do, I will support you. Then, I made an even more shocking request. Father, let us lay down our arms and return to the countryside. What? The smile on his face froze. I calmly laid out the speech I had prepared. Father, you have fought for Great Xia for half your life and are covered in wounds. The struggle for the throne is intensifying, and the court is treacherous. Our family holds great military power and has become a thorn in the side of all factions. Instead of being drawn into the whirlpool and losing control, why not take the initiative now, while His Majesty still remembers our old loyalties, and hand over our military power? We can return to our ancestral home in Anhe Town and live as wealthy country squires. That is the only way to protect our family. These were words I had learned from the blood and tears of my past life. My father was silent. He was a pure soldier, loyalty to the throne etched in his bones. To ask him to give up his command was like asking him to cut off his own arm. I did not press him further, just knelt in silence. I knew that, for my mother and me, he would waver. Sure enough, after a long while, he sighed. Let me think about it. I knew then that it was settled. For the next few days, I stayed at home, helping my mother with household chores, learning needlework, and looking at account books, completely transforming myself into a proper young lady. During this time, I heard that the third prince had been assassinated on the Western Mountain and was seriously injured, nearly losing his life. The first prince was placed under house arrest as a result, and a tense atmosphere hung over the court. All of this deviated slightly from my past life, but the general direction was the same. Xiao Wei still gained the emperor's sympathy and compensation for this incident, and began to make a name for himself at court. And I, one afternoon, received an unexpected visitor. The steward reported that the third prince himself had come to the residence and had specifically asked to see me. Me hand, which was embroidering, faltered. The needle pricked my finger, and a drop of blood welled up. He had found me. I didn't know how. Perhaps he had other spies in the woods that day. Or perhaps he had traced the style of my hunting clothes to the general's residence. In any case, he was here. I changed into a simple, elegant dress and went to the front hall. He had changed out of his tattered clothes from that day and was wearing a moon-white brocade robe. Though his face was still pale, it added to his frail beauty. He was toying with a jade pendant. When he saw me, he stood up, his eyes burning. "Miss Yi, we meet again," I curtsied flatly. "Your Highness." My aloofness made him frown. "There is no need for such formalities, Miss Yi," he said, stepping closer, trying to close the distance between us. "Thank you for your help on the Western Mountain that day." "You have the wrong person, Your Highness." I took a step back, maintaining my distance. "I did not save anyone that day." The expression on his face froze. He seemed not to have expected me to deny it to his face. "Miss Yi," his voice dropped. "I am not a fool. Besides you and me, there was no one else in the woods that day. The way the assassins died was clearly the work of a master. Besides the general of the North's residence, which other young lady in the capital has such skills? If Your Highness wishes to make assumptions, that is your affair," I said, lowering my eyes. My voice devoid of emotion. I said I did not, and I did not. He stared at me, as if trying to see through me. "Why?" he asked in a low voice, a hint of confusion and hurt in it. "Why do you deny it? What are you afraid of?" "Retaliation from the first prince. Do not worry. With me here, no one will dare to touch a hair on your head." Afraid? I laughed inwardly. I.e. Zhao, who was not even afraid of death, would I be afraid of a disgraced prince? I was only afraid of you, Xiaojie. Afraid of getting involved with you again, of repeating the mistakes of my past life. "You are overthinking, Your Highness," I said, looking up and meeting his gaze, my eyes clear and firm. "I am just an ordinary young lady, with no strength to even truss a chicken. I cannot bear the title of savior. Please leave." It was the first and last time I would ever ask him to leave. In that moment, I saw shock, anger, and a hint of unbelievable hurt in his eyes. Hurt. The noble third prince, the future emperor, was hurt by my denial. How ridiculous. He eventually left, full of confusion and anger. I could feel his complex gaze lingering on me as he left. He didn't understand. He didn't understand why this unusual woman would avoid him like the plague. In his past life, he was used to my following and adoration. In this life, my coldness and distance were perhaps a new challenge, arousing his desire to conquer. But I didn't care. Not long after he left, my father finally made up his mind. He submitted a memorial to the emperor, stating that he was old and ailing, unable to bear the hardships of military life, and requested to resign his post, hand over his command, and return to his hometown to retire. This caused an uproar in the court. The emperor was shocked, the officials in an uproar. The general of the North, who held great military power, wanted to give it all up. It was unheard of. Some speculated that the Yi family had gone mad, others that it was a strategic retreat. The emperor summoned my father several times, trying to persuade him, making promises. But my father was resolute. Finally, with my father's insistence and my behind-the-scenes pushing, I had my mother cry before the empress several times, expressing her worries about her husband's life on the battlefield, and her longing for a peaceful life. The emperor relented. He agreed to my father's resignation, took back the command of the Black Armor Army, but allowed the Yi family to keep their noble title, and rewarded them with a large amount of gold, silver, and land as compensation for their service. The day the edict came, I saw my father take off the armor he had worn his whole life and change into civilian clothes. There was reluctance in his eyes, but more of a sense of relief. I knew we had taken the right first step. The day we left the capital, the weather was clear. Our family's carriage, hidden among a merchant caravan, quietly left the city. I didn't look back. I knew that on the city wall there might be a pair of eyes watching me. These past few days he had come to see me several times. Once he had even climbed the wall into my courtyard in the middle of the night, just to ask me, "Why?" I had always been cold to him. I told him I had no interest in him, and even less in his princely status. I just wanted a peaceful life. The more he pestered me, the more annoyed I became. The last time, he cornered me, his eyes red. "Yi Zhao, are you really so heartless? What is it about me that you dislike so much?" I looked at his handsome face, which now felt suffocating, and finally said something harsh. "Your Highness," I said, enunciating each word. "Your affection, I cannot afford, and I find it dirty." Those words were like a knife plunging into his heart. I saw his face instantly turn pale, his eyes filled with hurt, but I felt no pity, compared to my despair on the city wall in my past life. This little hurt of his was nothing. Our carriage moved on, and the silhouette of the capital slowly faded. Goodbye, Xiao Wei. In this life, be your emperor. Marry your noble lady, your glory, your throne, have nothing to do with me. My new life is in Anhe Town. There are small bridges and flowing water, ordinary streets and alleys, and a stable happiness that I can touch. Anhe Town was a beautiful place. The Yi family's ancestral home was on the east side of town, a large 3-courtyard residence. Though it had been empty for years, with a little renovation it was restored to its former elegance. Our family began a new life here. My father shed his general's authority and spent his days gardening or going to the tea house to listen to storytellers. He soon became friends with the neighbors. My mother started a vegetable garden in the backyard and spent her free time doing needlework and chatting with the other ladies. And I finally lived the life I had envied in my past life. I no longer had to wake at dawn to practice martial arts, to study obscure military strategies, or to tie all my emotions to one person. I could sleep in, wear pretty dresses to go shopping, and buy the cosmetics and jewelry I liked. I took over a few of the family's shops and learned to manage the accounts. I applied the management and planning skills I had learned in the army to business, and it was surprisingly effective. Soon, the shops were flourishing. Everyone in town knew that the young lady from the Yi family who had returned from the capital was not only beautiful but also a business genius. Matchmakers were practically breaking down our door. Among the most persistent was the Lai family, who owned the local Jishatang pharmacy. Dr. Li of Jishatang was a renowned physician, and his son, Li Xuan, was a gentle and refined scholar of my age, preparing for the imperial examinations next year. Li Xuan was, as his name suggested, cultured and polite, always speaking softly, his eyes full of warmth. We met a few times. He would always bring me little poems he had written or small bamboo carvings he had made. He never asked about my life in the capital, or why I had gone from a general's daughter to a merchant's daughter. He just quietly accompanied me, listening to my stories about the shops, watching the sunset with me. Being with him was comfortable, reassuring. My mother liked him very much and would often say to me, "Zhao, I think that Xuan boy is a good match. He is well read and has a good temperament. If you like him, I'll go and ask for you." I would just smile and say nothing. It wasn't that I didn't like him, but could my heart, so broken in my past life, ever beat for someone again? I was afraid to give my heart again, to be let down again. Life flowed on like the gentle stream in Anhe Town. 3 years passed. News from the capital would occasionally reach us. I heard that the third prince, Xiao Jie, had grown powerful at court and was eventually named Crown Prince. I heard that the first and second princes had lost the struggle for the throne and had met a tragic end. I heard that the old emperor's health was failing and he intended to abdicate. To me, this news was just stories from the tea house, distant and unreal. I continued to live my small life. My business grew, and I even opened branches in neighboring prefectures. I became a well-known businesswoman. People called me Boss Yi, and gradually forgot that I was once the daughter of General Yi. Until one day, an urgent letter from the capital shattered the peace of Anhe Town. The letter was from an old subordinate of my father's. It said that the northern nomads had broken the treaty and were invading. Having already taken 3 cities, their forces advancing toward the capital. The generals sent to fight them had either been killed or had surrendered. The great Xia army was in retreat, its morale shattered, and the court in an uproar. The letter ended with words written in blood. General, Great Xia is in peril. Return at once. My father's hair turned white overnight. He locked himself in his study for 3 days and 3 nights. I knew he was torn. On one side was the nation. On the other, the peaceful life we had worked so hard to build. On the 4th day, he came out, his eyes bloodshot. He said to my mother and me, "I am going back to the capital." My mother cried, clinging to his hand. My heart tightened as well. "Father, you are no longer a general. The affairs of the court have nothing to do with us," I pleaded. "They have nothing to do with me," he said, his voice hoarse but firm. "But I was once a soldier of Great Xia. I cannot stand by and watch the nomads' iron hooves trample my homeland and slaughter my people." "But what can you do if you go back?" I said urgently. "You have no command, will the new. The crown prince listen to you? You are going to your death." "I know," he said, looking at me with a faint smile. "Zhao, your father has been a soldier his whole life. The best end for me is to die on the battlefield. To shed my last drop of blood for this land is my honor." Seeing his resolute gaze, I knew I could not stop him. In my past life, it was for this so-called loyalty and honor that he had died. In this life, I had tried so hard to help him avoid this fate, but the wheel of destiny seemed to be turning back to its original path. I would not allow it. I would not allow him to walk that path again. "All right," I said, taking a deep breath and stepping forward. "If you go, I will go with you." "Nonsense," he shouted. "What would a girl like you do there? I will do what I must." I looked him in the eye and said, word for word, "Father, do not forget. I have learned all of your strategies and tactics. I have not neglected my skills with the spear. When it comes to warfare, I am not necessarily inferior to those fools in the capital. Besides," my tone turned cold, "do you think that if Great Xia falls, our family can remain safe in Anhe town? When the nest is overturned, how can any egg remain intact? Instead of waiting to be slaughtered, it is better to take the initiative. I am not going for that high and mighty crown prince. Not for the imperial family. I am going for you, for Mother, for the people of Anhe town, for the land that gave me birth. Father, let me go. I will fight this war." My words were firm and resounding, stunning my parents. They looked at me as if I were a stranger. Yes, these 3 years of peace had almost made them forget that I was the same Ya Zhao, who had single-handedly killed several top assassins on the Western Mountain. In my bones, the blood of the General of the North still flowed. I could take off my armor for my family and live a simple life. But when my country needed me, I could also put it back on and fight for them. In the end, my father relented. He agreed to let me go, but on one condition: he had to go with me. He might not go to the battlefield, but he had to be in the capital to watch over me, to protect me. I agreed. Before I left, Li Xuan came to see me. He stood at my door, holding a protective amulet, his eyes red. "Yeah, Zhao," he said softly. I will wait for you to come back." I looked at his gentle, worried face, and my heart warmed. I took the amulet and smiled. Okay, I didn't tell him that this journey might be my last, that I might never return. I also didn't tell him that the reason I had agreed so readily was because I knew better than anyone how dangerous this war would be. In my past life, it was in this war that Xiao Jie's army had been utterly defeated, almost losing half the empire. And it was in this war that I, at a critical moment, had taken command of the remaining troops and turned the tide, finally driving the nomads back to the steppes. But that war had been brutal. I had won, but I had also exhausted the last of my strength. This time, without me, Xiaoju, what will you do? I was eager to find out. Me father and I traveled day and night, finally reaching the capital after half a month. The city was no longer the bustling metropolis we had left. The gates were heavily guarded, and the people on the streets looked fearful. A A sense of panic hung in the air. We revealed our identities, and the guards at the gate, upon seeing my father, were so moved they knelt and hailed him as Old General. It was a clear sign of how low the army's morale had fallen. We did not go back to our old residence. We stayed at an inn. I didn't want him to know I was back so soon. I wanted to see for myself what a mess he and his men had made of the empire. For the next few days, my father and I visited the various military offices and some of his old subordinates. The news we gathered was more alarming with each passing day. The army at the front was short on supplies and pay. The court was divided between factions advocating for war and peace. And the regent, Crown Prince Xiaoji, overwhelmed by a few defeats, was even considering moving the capital. Coward. My father smashed his teacup in the inn. To flee in the face of the enemy, is that what a ruler does? Does he have any royal blood in him at all? I was calm, because all of this was within my expectations. In my past life, if not for me, he would have taken his court and fled to the south to establish a so-called southern Shia. That was just the kind of person he was. He thrived when things were going well, but fell apart at the first sign of trouble. Father, do not be angry, I said, pouring him a new cup of tea. He may be incompetent, but that does not mean we are. You, my father looked at me. Zhaoer, what are you planning? I smiled, a glint in my eye. Father, do you remember the Black Armor Army? My father's body stiffened. The Black Armor Army, the elite force he had personally trained, and my former troops. When we handed over our command 3 years ago, they had been disbanded and absorbed into the various capital guards. You want to, that is right, I said, standing up and walking to the window, looking toward the palace. I want to reassemble them. This is treason, my father said, aghast. In the eyes of the crown prince, perhaps, I sneered. But in my eyes, it is saving the nation. Father, in this situation, we can no longer rely on the officials at court or on that crown prince. We can only rely on ourselves. I need an army that is absolutely loyal to me, and the old Black Armor troops are the best choice. They do not recognize the court's command tokens, but our Yi family's banner. If I call, I believe they will return. My words were bold, arrogant, even treasonous. But my father, seeing the determination in my eyes, did not object. He knew I was right. He also knew this was the only way out. And so, with his help, I began to secretly contact the old Black Armor troops. The process was smoother than I had imagined. The men who had fought alongside my father and me were not doing well in the Capitol Guards. They were ostracized and looked down upon. They were tired of being led by incompetent commanders. When my messengers found them and said, "The young general is back," they agreed almost without hesitation. In just 10 days, I had secretly gathered nearly 5,000 of them. They hid in various estates and forests outside the capital, waiting for my command. And at this time, he was still arguing with his court about whether to fight or flee, to defend or retreat. He probably never dreamed that the solution he was so desperately seeking, the hidden general who could turn the tide, was already back right under his nose, and was, in the way he feared most, gathering strength. All was ready. All that was needed was the right wind. The wind I needed was an opportunity to appear at court, before him, with legitimacy. That opportunity soon came. The nomads, unable to take the strategic town of Wangyu City, sent their ace troops 30,000 wolf cavalry. The commander of Wangyu City sent urgent messages. 800 miles in a single day. The court was in a dead silence. The wolf cavalry was the nomads' most elite force, swift and powerful. The great Shia army on the open plains had almost no chance against them. Everyone knew that if Wangyu City fell, the capital would be defenseless. In this moment of panic, my father stepped forward. In front of the entire court, he recommended a general who could defeat the nomads to the regent. Crown Prince Xiaozhe, when he asked who this general was, my father slowly said my name. My humble daughter, Yi Zhao. The entire hall exploded. Ye Zhao, the general of the North's daughter. Isn't she running a business in Anhe town? A woman. Has General Yi gone mad to let a woman lead an army? This is absurd. Even if the nation is on the brink of collapse, we cannot be so reckless. Doubts, jeers, a chorus of disapproval. On the throne, his face was also extremely grim. He stared at my father, his expression a complex mixture of shock, suspicion, and something I couldn't quite place, anticipation. 3 years ago, the girl who had coldly rejected him, who had even said his affection was dirty, could she really save him now? He dared not believe it, but he couldn't help but hope, because he had no other choice. Summon her, he said, the word almost forced from his throat, when I, in a faded old hunting outfit with no makeup, calmly walked into the magnificent hall of supreme harmony. All the noise stopped. The entire court stared at me as if I were a madwoman, a freak. I walked straight to the center of the hall and, facing the man on the throne, gave a slight bow. I, the commoner Yi Zhao, greet your highness, the crown prince. No prostration, because from the moment I decided to put on my armor again, I had no intention of ever bowing my knee to him again. His pupils constricted. He looked at me. 3 years had passed. I had lost the innocence of my youth, and my features had sharpened, adding a touch of coldness and severity. But my eyes were the same as 3 years ago, as still as a deep pool with no ripples, and no trace of him. A sharp pain stabbed at his heart. Ye Zhao, he said, his voice a little dry. Your father says you can defeat the nomad wolf cavalry? I can, I said simply. Ha, a minister of war scoffed. A mere child speaking with such arrogance. The wolf cavalry is fierce. Even seasoned generals are at a loss. What makes a businesswoman like you think you can succeed? I didn't even bother to look at him. I just stared at him and said flatly, on what grounds? Give me 30,000 troops and 3 months of provisions, and you will see. 30,000 troops, the minister cried out again. The capital's mobile forces are less than 50,000. You ask for 30,000 right off the bat, you. All right, a cold, decisive voice interrupted. It was him. He stood up and walked down the steps to me. He was a head taller than me and now looked down at me, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't read. You want troops, I will give them to you. You want provisions, I will give them to you, he said through gritted teeth. But Yi Zhao, if you lose Wang U.S. City, I will have your entire family buried with you. His words were harsh, ruthless, filled with the authority of a ruler and a hint of vengeful spite after being ignored by me. I smiled. All right. I met his gaze without flinching. But what if I win? What do you want? I want 3 things. I held up 3 fingers. First, during this war, all military affairs will be under my sole command. No one, including you, your highness, will interfere. Second, after the war, I want a pardon for my father and the old black armor troops. They are fighting for the nation, not committing treason. Third, I paused, watching his face grow darker, and said, word for word, I want an imperial edict. An edict that allows my Yi family to renounce our citizenship of Great Shah, to move overseas, and to never return to this court. I want my family, with your Great Shah, with your Shao imperial family, to be completely and utterly severed. My words fell into a dead silence in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Everyone was stunned by my shocking demands. No reward, no title, no wealth or glory, just a complete and utter severance. What kind of aversion? What kind of resolve was this? The color drained from his face, leaving it a ghastly white. He looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. The fire in his eyes was about to erupt and burn me to ashes. Ye Zhao, he roared, grabbing my wrist with a force that threatened to crush my bones. Do you know what you are saying? I am very clear, I said, not flinching. Your Highness only needs to answer. Yes or no, never. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he had gone mad. You are a citizen of Great Shah. In life, you are a person of Great Shah. In death, a ghost of great Shah. You want to renounce your citizenship. You want to sever all ties with me, I tell you. It is impossible. Forever impossible. Is that so? I raised my other hand, and slowly, one by one, pried his fingers from my wrist. Your Highness, I believe you are not in a position to bargain right now. I looked at him, a sarcastic smile on my lips. Wooling City can hold out for 10 more days at most. After that, when the wolf cavalry is at the gates, do you want to die a martyr's death with your court officials and your noble lady from the Prime Minister's family, or do you want to flee south like a homeless dog? The choice is yours. Every word I said was a sharp knife twisting in his most painful wound. His pride, his self-respect, his incompetence were all laid bare for the world to see. He swayed as if all his strength had been drained. He looked at me, and besides anger, there was a hint of pleading in his eyes. Ye Zhao, must it be this way? His voice trembled. Between us, must it come to this? Between us. I almost laughed out loud. Between us, it had ended in my past life, on that snowy day when I died on the city wall. He just didn't know it. Your Highness, I said, taking a step back and regaining my composure. This is my only condition. Agree, and I will go to war. Disagree, and I will take my father back to Anhe Town immediately. From then on, the fate of the capital will have nothing to do with me. I had given him my ultimatum. The hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All eyes were on him, waiting for his decision. Time ticked by like a slow execution. After a long, long time, he finally closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with a dead, gray emptiness. All right. The word was squeezed from his throat. I agree. I received the command token and the general's seal. Xiao Ju, in his capacity as regent, named me General of the Vanquishing Nomads, with command over 30,000 troops, to immediately set out for Wangyu City. From the moment I walked into the Hall of Supreme Harmony to the moment I walked out with military command, it had been less than an hour. But that hour had been a high-stakes gamble. I had won. I had won the chance to go to war, and the contract for my freedom. When I walked out of the palace, my father was waiting for me, his face filled with worry and fear. Zhao, you were too rash. How could you make such a demand in front of the entire court? You have completely offended the crown prince. So be it, I shrugged. After this war, we are leaving anyway. The more he is offended, the more readily he will let us go. My father looked at me, at a loss for words, and finally let out a long sigh. He knew that his daughter was no longer the little girl who needed his protection. She had her own ideas, her own path to walk. At the command platform, 30,000 troops were assembled. Among them, 25,000 were capital guards, temporarily transferred from various units. They looked at me, their young female general, with suspicion and disdain. The other 5,000 were the old black armor troops I had secretly recalled. They wore the same armor as the others and were mixed in with the crowd, but their eyes were completely different. It was a look of fanatical devotion and trust, as if they had found their leader. I didn't give a speech immediately. I just mounted my horse. My horse was my father's prized steed, Snow Treader. It was pure white and magnificent. I, in my silver armor, holding a long spear, slowly rode before the army. I know that many of you look down on me. My voice was not loud, but it carried to every soldier's ear. You look down on me because I am a woman, because I am too young. You think I am not worthy of being your general, not worthy of leading you against the nomad wolf cavalry. A small commotion rippled through the Capitol guards. I had hit the nail on the head. I ignored it and continued. I do not want to waste words with you. In the army, strength speaks. How about this? I reined in my horse and pointed my spear at the tallest, most robust-looking captain among the Capitol guards. You come out and fight me. If you can last 30 rounds against me, I will give you this general's seal. But if you lose, my eyes sharpened. From now on, you will all obey my orders without question. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. The crowd was in an uproar. The captain I had pointed out was both shocked and angry. He was a famous warrior in the Imperial Guard. To be publicly challenged by a woman was a great humiliation. "All right, you said it," he roared, and charged out with his greatsword. The Capitol guards behind him cheered, waiting to see me make a fool of myself. But in the Black Armor Army's ranks, there was silence. Their faces even held a hint of pity. Pity for the captain. Because only they knew how terrifying their young general was. The captain's greatsword was powerful and swift. A normal general might have had some trouble, but in my eyes it was full of openings. I didn't even use my spear techniques. I just sat on my horse and easily parried his attacks with the shaft of my spear. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal on metal was incessant. After 10 rounds, I was unmoved. After 20, the captain was panting, sweat beading on his forehead. And I was still calm. The cheers from the Capitol guards died down. The disdain on their faces slowly turned to shock. 30 rounds are up, I said flatly. As I parried his last blow, I twisted my wrist. And the spear shaft, like a striking snake, lightly tapped him on the chest. He felt a great force and was sent flying backward, landing heavily on the ground. His great sword flying from his hand. The field was silent. Everyone stared at the scene, dumbfounded. The victor was decided, clean and swift. I hadn't even made a single thrust. I rode up to the captain and looked down at him. "Do you submit?" He struggled to his feet. The look in his eyes had gone from anger to fear, and finally to respect. He knelt on one knee, bowed his head, and said in a loud voice, "This subordinate wholeheartedly submits, greetings, General." His kneeling was a signal. The 25,000 Capitol guards behind him, after a moment's hesitation, also knelt on one knee, their voices a roaring tide. "Greetings, General." I nodded in satisfaction. I knew that from this moment on, this army was truly mine. I did not linger in the capital. I immediately ordered the army to march to the aid of Wangyu City. Before I left, I looked back at the magnificent imperial city. On the city wall, a figure in bright yellow seemed to have been standing in the wind for a long, long time. I looked away, with no regrets. Xiaozhe, wait for my good news, and wait for our final farewell. The army marched quickly, and after 5 days, we finally arrived at Wangyu City. The scene was even more tragic than I had imagined. The city walls were covered in sword and axe marks, and many sections had collapsed. The banners on the watchtowers were tattered. Outside, a sea of nomad tents stretched as far as the eye could see, surrounding the small city. Seeing our reinforcements, a chorus of provocative horns sounded from the nomad camp. The commander of Wangyu City was an old general named Chen Jing. When he saw me, tears streamed down his face. "General Yi, you have finally come. If you had been 2 days later, I fear this city would have truly fallen." I comforted him and immediately went to the city wall to observe the enemy. The wolf cavalry was as formidable as their reputation suggested. They were disciplined, their formations orderly, their camp well organized, with no apparent weaknesses. More importantly, their morale was extremely high. In contrast, although we had 30,000 reinforcements, the defenders of Wangyu City were already exhausted, their morale low. In a head-on clash, we had no chance. "General Chen," I said after observing the enemy, "how long can the city's provisions last?" He looked troubled. "If we are careful, 7 days at most." 7 days, even less time than I had thought. I returned to the temporary command tent, spread out a map, and began to think of a strategy. The captains of the Capitol Guards stood around, their faces grim. "General, the nomads are strong and we are outnumbered. Perhaps we should defend and wait for more reinforcements." "Wait for reinforcements. By the time those old men in the capital send more troops, we'll be skeletons." "Then what do you suggest? We charge out and fight them to the death." They argued back and forth, with no viable plan. I said nothing, just studied the map. My finger stopped at a place called Eagle's Sorrow Ravine. It was the only supply route to Wangyu City. a narrow valley with steep cliffs on either side, a natural choke point, easy to defend and hard to attack. In my past life, it was here that I had set an ambush and with a great fire had burned all the nomads' supplies, turning the tide of the war. In this life, I would naturally use the same tactic. My orders, I finally said. My voice not loud, but it silenced everyone. From this day on, the entire army will remain within the city and hang the no battle sign. What? A captain exclaimed. General, if we hide, will that not just boost the enemy's morale? Carry out the order, I said coldly, leaving no room for argument. Then I turned to my deputy commander, an old black armor soldier named Zhang Hu. Zhang Hu, Sheer General, Tonite. At midnight, you will take 500 black armor troops, sneak out of the city, and set up an ambush at Eagle's Sorrow Ravine. Remember, only bring dry rations and oil, do not alert anyone. A glint of excitement appeared in his eyes. He knew the general was planning something big. Yes, General. As for the rest of you, I looked around. For the next few days, your job is to act. Act. They were confused. A cold smile touched my lips. That is right. Act as if we are cowards afraid to fight. I want the nomads to completely let down their guard. For the next 3 days, Wang U.S. City was peaceful. I ordered the soldiers to rest in shifts and even allowed them to drink a little. The guards on the walls became lax. At first, the nomads thought it was a trick and sent several waves of challengers. We ignored them. Gradually, they began to believe it. They believed that our army, led by a female general, was just for show, and that we did not dare to face them. Jeers and insults began to spread from their camp. They said Great Xia had no men, and had sent a woman to her death. They said the general of the vanquishing nomads should be called the general of the cowering turtle. When these words reached our soldiers, they were all furious, and several times were on the verge of charging out. But I held them back with military law. This was the effect I wanted. I wanted them to bottle up their anger, a raging fire. A fire that would erupt with terrible force when I needed it. On the 4th night, a strong wind began to blow. I knew the time had come. I summoned all the commanders and laid out the battle plan. Tonight, at the 3rd watch, the entire army will attack. The target is the nomads' central command tent. General, we cannot. A Capital Guard captain said urgently, they have 30,000 wolf cavalry, and we only have 30,000 men. A night raid on their command tent is suicide. Yes, General, it is too risky. My mind is made up, I interrupted. You just need to remember when you charge into their camp, do not get bogged down in fighting. Just one word, burn. Burn their tents, burn their supplies, burn everything you can. But no buts. I slammed my hand on the table and stood up, my eyes as sharp as a knife. The fire at Eagle's Sorrow Ravine will be our signal for a full-scale attack. Zhang Hu will cut off their retreat from behind. Our job is to use a great fire to completely throw them into chaos. In this battle, either we will be burned to death, or they will. Do you understand? Seeing my resolute gaze, all the commanders' hearts turned cold, and they dared not object. Understood. At the 3rd watch, all was quiet. The gates of Wang U.S. City opened silently. 30,000 troops, with cloth in their mouths and hooves wrapped, flowed out like a black tide toward the sleeping nomad camp. Every man's heart was filled with a burning fire. A fire that was about to spread across the plains. The nomads' defenses were indeed lax. Our vanguard, with little effort, took out their sentries and rushed into the camp. Light the fires! At my command, countless torches were thrown into the tents. The dry tents, doused in oil, instantly burst into flames. The wind fanned the flames, and in a moment, the entire camp was a sea of fire. Charge! The suppressed anger of the past few days exploded. The great Shah soldiers, like tigers descending a mountain, charged at the nomads who were just waking from their sleep, dazed and confused. The scene instantly devolved into chaos, though the nomads were fierce warriors. In this sudden confusion, They could not organize an effective resistance. Some were cut down before they could even put on their armor. Some were consumed by the flames before they could find their horses. At that moment, from the rear of their camp, from the direction of Eagle's Sorrow Ravine, a great fire also erupted into the sky. I knew Zhang Hu had succeeded. The nomads' supplies were burning. The enemy's supplies are on fire. Brothers, charge. Seeing the signal, our soldiers' morale soared, and their attack became even more ferocious. The nomads were in a complete panic, pursued from the front, their retreat cut off from behind, their supplies burning. Their famed wolf cavalry was useless in the narrow, chaotic confines of the camp. Their defeat was swift and total. The nomad commander, seeing all was lost, decisively ordered a retreat to the north. Trying to run? I sneered. Not so easy. Black Armor Army. I raised my spear and roared. Here, 5,000 black armor soldiers, like 5,000 unsheathed swords, instantly gathered around me. Follow me. We will cut off the nomad commander. Yes, I led the charge, with the elite of the Black Armor Army, like a sharp dagger plunging into the retreating nomad forces. Our only target was the nomad commander in his golden armor. To catch a thief, first catch the king. If we killed him, their army would completely collapse. That night, I was a killing machine. Wherever my spear went, men and horses fell and blood and flesh flew. All the hatred, all the resentment, all the unwillingness of 2 lifetimes were vented with the spilling of blood. I was no longer the Yi Zhao who had carefully tried to win his smile in the capital. Nor was I the boss Yi who had only wanted a quiet life in Anhe town. I was me, the daughter of the general of the north, the commander of 3 armies, a demon on the battlefield. Finally, I reached the nomad commander. He looked at me, the woman who had brought about his downfall, his eyes filled with horror and disbelief. You, who are you? I didn't answer. I just raised my spear. It shot out like a dragon, one thrust, through the throat. The news of the great victory at Wangyu City spread to the capital at lightning speed. When the report was laid on his desk, he could hardly believe his eyes. 3 days of no action, then a night of fire, with 30,000 weary troops to defeat 30,000 elite wolf cavalry and kill the enemy commander. This was a myth. He stared at the familiar yet foreign name on the report general of the vanquishing nomads. Yi Zhao. His heart was squeezed by an invisible hand. He remembered the girl in the woods 3 years ago, who had coldly told him, "What have you to do with me?" He remembered the girl in the general's residence, who had stubbornly denied saving him. He remembered the woman in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, just a few days ago, who had, in the calmest voice, said she wanted to be completely and utterly severed from him. So she hadn't been bluffing, so she really had such incredible talent. But what had he done? He had driven her away, so much so that she would rather give up everything to leave him, to leave this country, now. In his darkest hour, she had returned, not for him, but for a promise of freedom. She had said that after the war, she would take her family and leave. At this thought, his heart was pierced by 1,000 needles, the pain unbearable. He had never felt such panic, as if something incredibly precious was about to be lost forever. He sat on the throne, dazed, her words echoing in his mind. Your affection, I cannot afford, and I find it dirty. I want my family, with your great Xia, with your Shao imperial family, to be completely and utterly severed. Why, he didn't understand. He really didn't. He had, apart from that one setback 3 years ago, never wronged the Yi family. He had even allowed them to keep their title and honor after her father's resignation. He had thought she was just cold, proud. He had thought that with enough sincerity and power, he could one day win her back. But he was wrong. Completely wrong. Her resolve was not a tantrum. It was a deep-seated, absolute aversion. Men. He stood up abruptly, his voice hoarse with emotion. Prepare the horses. I am going to Wangyu City. He had to see her. He had to ask her face to face. Why? He could not let her go. Absolutely not. I was dealing with the aftermath of the battle, clearing the battlefield, tending to the wounded, tallying the merits. Though we had won a great victory, we had also paid a heavy price. Of our 30,000 troops, nearly 5,000 were casualties. Especially the black armor troops who had charged with me, almost every one of them was wounded. I was personally bandaging Zhang Hu's arm when a soldier rushed in. "General, the Crown Prince is here." My hand paused. "He is here, so soon. Is he here to recall me to the capital, or to take back his promise?" I sneered inwardly but remained composed. "I know." I continued to carefully tie the last knot on Zhang Hu's bandage. "General," Zhang Hu said with a worried look, "for the Crown Prince to come at this time, I fear his intentions are not good." "We will deal with it when it comes," I said, patting his shoulder. "You rest up, I will handle the rest." I walked out of the infirmary and saw a magnificent procession in the distance. He, in the bright yellow robes of the Crown Prince, was walking toward me surrounded by guards. He seemed to have lost weight, and there was even a faint stubble on his chin, making him look a little haggard. But his eyes were astonishingly bright. He just stared at me, as if he wanted to devour me whole. I walked up to him, and as before, only gave a slight bow. "Your Highness." He said nothing, just looked at me. The surrounding soldiers all knelt, but I stood straight, like an unbending spear. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. "You may all rise," he finally said, his voice a little hoarse. He dismissed his attendants and walked up to me. "You have done well." He looked at me, seeming to search for some sign of joy or pride on my face, but he was disappointed. My face was still the same emotionless mask. "It was my duty," I replied flatly. His fists clenched in his sleeves. Again, this same cold, distant demeanor. "Why did you not kneel?" He finally asked the question that had been bothering him. "Because I am not your subject," I said, looking up and meeting his gaze. "I am just a general you hired to fight a war. When the contract is fulfilled, we will be even." "Contract?" The word stabbed at his heart. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "In your heart, is that all we are?" "What else?" I asked. "What else should we be?" "Ya Zhao," he finally raised his voice. "Must you speak to me this way, 3 years ago?" "No, from the first time we met. Why have you always been like this to me? What have I done wrong to make you hate me, fear me, want to run from me?" His questions were like a hammer pounding on my heart. "What have you done wrong? You have done nothing wrong. You just married another while I was guarding the nation's gates for you. You just didn't even give me a gravestone after I died. You just ruined my life." The words swirled in my throat, but I did not say them. Because it was meaningless. To argue about past grievances with someone who had already died once, how ridiculous. "Your Highness," I said, taking a deep breath and suppressing all my emotions. "There is no need to speak of the past. The main nomad force has been defeated, and the remaining remnants are no threat. My mission is complete. As we agreed, please honor your promise." I held out my hand, asking for that the edict of freedom. His body trembled violently. He looked at my outstretched hand, the hand that had, in his mind, saved him, the hand he had once squeezed so tightly, and now it seemed to be demanding a blood debt that could never be repaid. "Promise?" He laughed bitterly. "Ya Zhao, do you really want to leave that much?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Why?" His voice held a hint of pleading. "Is it not good to stay? Whatever you want, I can give you. The position of Empress, I can give that to you too. I can deal with the Meng family. I can give you the glory and status that all the women in the world envy." He had finally said it, the same words as in my past life. "When I rule the world, I will make you my Empress." But it was too late. A lifetime too late. I looked at him and suddenly felt a sense of pity. Pity for him, and for the foolish girl who had believed him in my past life. "Your Highness," I laughed softly. a laugh filled with endless desolation and mockery. You should save your empress's throne for the Meng family's young lady. I, Yi Zhao, am not worthy. As for what I want, I paused and said, word for word what I want, you cannot give. You cannot give me my father's health, my mother's smile, or my Yi family a peaceful life. These things I can only have if I leave you. Leave this place of turmoil. My words were like a bucket of ice water pouring over his head, chilling him to the bone. He finally understood. I was not throwing a tantrum. I was not playing hard to get. I was truly, with all my heart, determined to leave. Number, he muttered. And then, as if he had gone mad, he grabbed my shoulders and shook me. I forbid it. I forbid you to leave. Yi Zhao, you are mine. You can only be mine. He was strong, and he shook me until I was dizzy. The surrounding guards and soldiers were too stunned to intervene. Let go, I shouted. I won't. His eyes were bloodshot like a cornered beast. Unless you tell me why, tell me. What have I done to wrong you? Give me a reason. Just one. A reason. You want a reason, fine. I'll give you one. I wrenched myself free, took a step back, and pointed toward the capital, my voice suddenly shrill. Xiaoju, you ask me why. Why don't you go and ask the 19-year-old female general who died on the wall of a northern city 3 winters ago? Ask her what it felt like to die for her country on your wedding day. Her body left to rot in the open. Ask her how you could so peacefully share the empire she had won for you with another woman. Go and ask her? I practically screamed the words. The scars I had forcibly suppressed, covered up with 3 years of a quiet life, were now torn open by him, and the blood flowed freely. My chest heaved, and tears streamed down my face. It was the first time I had cried since my rebirth, not for him, but for the self who had died without peace in my past life. The world seemed to fall silent. He stood there, frozen like a stone statue. The madness and rage on his face had vanished, replaced by an endless confusion and fear. What are you talking about? His lips trembled. What, 3 winters ago? What female general? What wedding day? What nonsense was she talking about? 3 winters ago, he had just been named Crown Prince and was discussing marriage with the Meng family. There had been no war in the north. Where did this female general who had died on a city wall come from? He looked at my tear-streaked face, and an unprecedented panic rose in his heart. He thought I had gone mad, or that he was the one who was mad. You don't understand, do you? I said, looking at his bewildered face. I wiped my tears and suddenly laughed, a laugh that was both tragic and liberating. Yes, how could he understand? That was my past life, my nightmare. To him, it was just the ramblings of a madwoman. So be it. Since he didn't understand, there was no need for him to. This entanglement had gone on long enough. It was time to end it. Your Highness, I said, my expression returning to its initial calm. It seems there is nothing more to talk about. As for that edict, I looked at his dazed figure and said flatly, I believe that as the regent of a nation, you are a man of your word and will not go back on your promise. With that, I turned to leave without another look at him. Stop, he called out hoarsely. I did not stop. Ye Zhao, stop! He tried to follow, but Zhang Hu and a few other black armor soldiers silently blocked his path. Your Highness, Zhang Hu said with a respectful but firm tone. Our general is tired and needs to rest. Whatever you have to say can wait until tomorrow. Xiao Wei looked at my retreating back, then at the loyal soldiers before him. He swayed, and a mouthful of blood sprayed from his lips. Your Highness! The surrounding guards cried out in alarm and rushed to support him. I heard the commotion behind me, my steps only faltering for a moment. Then I continued to walk on without looking back. Xiaoji, is your heart finally beginning to ache? But this is not enough. Not nearly enough to repay a 10,000th of what I suffered in my past life. He fell ill, overcome with anger and exhaustion from the long journey. He had collapsed on the spot. The imperial physicians rushed him to the Yamen in Wangyue City, and tended to him day and night. This gave me some peace. While he was ill, I quickly dealt with the remaining matters in the north. I sent troops to pursue the nomad remnants, driving them deep into the steppes. At the same time, I sent a memorial to the court, requesting a 3-year tax exemption for the northern cities so they could recover. After all this was done, I handed over the command token and the general's seal to Chen Jing. My mission was complete. All that remained was to wait for that edict. He was unconscious for 3 days. During those 3 days, he had a recurring dream. A dream that was terrifyingly real. In the dream, he saw a version of himself, identical in appearance, but more mature, more authoritative. He saw how that self had, with my help, ascended the throne step by step. He saw how that self had promised me the position of empress. And then, he saw how that self, to stabilize the court and to win over the prime minister's family, had broken that promise and married Meng Wanqing instead. He saw that on the day of his wedding, the northern frontier was in flames. He saw me, in heavy armor, going north alone to guard the nation's gates for him. Finally, he saw the scene that shattered his soul. In the snow and ice, on the wall of a lonely city, the woman he had loved and betrayed his whole life, covered in blood, dying with her eyes open. And he, the emperor self, was in a warm palace with his new empress, enjoying boundless glory. No. He woke from the dream with a piercing scream. He was drenched in sweat, his heart in agony. He couldn't tell if it was a dream or something that had actually happened. Yi Zhao, Yi Zhao, he murmured my name. His eyes filled with fear and regret. He finally understood. He finally understood what I had meant by those mad words. He also finally understood the source of my deep-seated hatred and aversion. So he had truly wronged me for a lifetime, owed me a life, an empire, men. He struggled to get out of bed, ignoring the physician's protests, and called out hoarsely, "Bring me a brush and ink, quickly." He was going to write an edict. He was not going to write the edict that would let me go. He was going to write a confession. He was going to tell the world that he, Xiao Jie, was a treacherous, ungrateful coward. He was going to keep me here. By any means necessary. He was going to keep me here. However, he was too late. The day before he woke, I had already taken my father and mother, and all the old Yi family retainers who were willing to follow us, and had quietly left Wangyu City. I had not waited for his edict, because I knew he would not give it. A ruler, especially one who had just experienced such a past life dream, would never let go of someone so important, someone to whom he owed so much. He would use every means to keep me by his side, with guilt, with compensation, with his self-righteous love to torment me, and himself. I didn't want it. I had just escaped this prison. I didn't want to go back. So, I left. Cleanly, completely. We traveled south, avoiding the main roads, and we changed into the clothes of ordinary merchants and distributed all our gold and silver, keeping only a little for travel. Our destination was the largest port in the south. Quanzhou had already arranged for a large sea vessel to be purchased there. We would set sail from there to a distant warm island, not even marked on the maps. There, we would start a new life. On the 3rd day of our journey, his pursuit began. Wanted posters with our portraits were everywhere. They said that General Yi Zhao had deserted her post, taken her family hostage, and fled, a crime that could not be forgiven. I looked at the poster and found it laughable. "Xiaoju, you have resorted to the most despicable means. If you can't have it, you destroy it. Unfortunately for you, you will not catch me. You may know this empire well, but when it comes to strategy and concealment, you are still far behind." For the next month, we played a game of cat and mouse with his men throughout the south. Time and again, he set his traps. And time and again, I led my people and escaped from places he never expected. He used all his power, the Imperial Guard, the local garrisons, the government officials, but he had forgotten that I was once one of this country's top commanders. His deployments were full of holes. This chase made him more and more frantic, more and more desperate. He seemed to be back at Wangyue City, the regent cornered and helpless. No, it was worse than that. Because this time, he was gambling with what he thought was a love he had lost and found again. We finally reached Quanzhou. The salty sea breeze on my face was the taste of freedom. The large ship we had bought was waiting quietly in the harbor. Once we were on board, we would be free. However, just as we were about to board, the unexpected happened. The port was sealed. Countless soldiers had surrounded the entire harbor. At the head of them was someone I had not expected. Meng Wangxing. She was no longer the prime minister's daughter, but the crown princess. She stood on the pier in a magnificent court dress, looking down at us. Her expression complex. Behind her stood a gaunt, emaciated man. It was him. He had personally chased me here. "Yeah, Zhao," she spoke first, her voice clear but tinged with weariness. "His Highness has been waiting for you for a long time. Come back with us." I looked at her, the woman who had taken my place in my past life. She was beautiful, graceful, and dignified. Indeed, the best choice for an empress. "Your Highness," I said flatly. "We walk different paths, please let us pass." A look of helplessness crossed her face. She looked back at him. He was staring at me, his lips moving, but no words came out. The chase had drained all his energy. He looked as if he had aged 10 years. "Ya Zhao," she sighed and continued. "I know you hate him, but a nation cannot be without a ruler, and Great Shah cannot be without you. Though the nomads have retreated, the Chang to the west and the barbarians to the south are restless. Without you, this empire will fall into chaos again. For the sake of the people, can you not? Put aside your personal grievances." Her words were grand, righteous. In my past life, I might have been moved, but now I just found it laughable. "The people?" I scoffed. "Your Highness, this empire is your Shao family's empire. These people are your Shao family's people. What have they to do with me, Yi Zhao? My family has served the nation with loyalty, has bled and sacrificed. And what have we received in return? Suspicion, betrayal, a lonely death on a battlefield. And now, with a single for the sake of the people, you want me to go back and work for your Shao family again? Do you not find that shameless?" My words made her face turn pale. Behind her, he swayed violently, almost falling. "Zhao," he finally spoke, his voice as hoarse as sandpaper. "It was my fault. It was all my fault. Come back, please. You can hit me, curse me, kill me. Just come back, I beg you." The once high and mighty prince, the future emperor, was now in front of everyone, begging me in the most humble tone. The surrounding soldiers and people were stunned. I looked at him, my heart empty of any emotion. "Too late, Xiaoju. It is all too late, trust. Once broken can never be rebuilt. A heart, once dead, can never be revived." "Your Highness," I said, giving him one last look, a look as calm as if I were looking at a stranger. "Take care." With that, I ignored them and ordered my men. "Board the ship." "Who dares?" he shrieked. "Stop them. Anyone who lets them go will be executed." The soldiers immediately raised their weapons and surrounded us. The atmosphere was tense. A bloody battle seemed imminent. However, I did not order a counterattack. I just stood on the deck, looking at him. "Your Highness," I said slowly, "do you really want to make your soldiers and my loyal men kill each other just to keep me here? Do you really want these soldiers, who have just bled for you on the northern battlefield, to turn their blades on their own comrades?" My voice was not loud, but it reached every ear. Many of the surrounding soldiers hesitated, their faces filled with reluctance. Some of them were the same Capitol Guards from the Wangyue City battlefield. They had seen with their own eyes how I had led them to an impossible victory. In their hearts, I was a hero, a savior. And now, they were being ordered to draw their swords against me. His face grew even paler. He knew I was striking at his heart. "Zhao," he said, closing his eyes in pain. "Must you force me like this? The one forcing you has never been me," I replied coldly. It has always been yourself. Just then, my father, who had been silent, stepped forward. He looked at him, the young man in whom he had once placed his hopes, and said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, let her go. I know you feel you have wronged her, but love cannot be forced. The more you do this, the further you will push her away. Let her go. Let her live the life she wants. I beg of you." With that, the old general, who had spent his life on horseback, slowly bent his knee, a knee that had never bent to anyone before. "Father," I cried out and rushed to help him up. He was also stunned. He looked at the white-haired Ye Shaoxin kneeling before him, the former god of war of Great Xia, and the last of his defenses crumbled. He had lost completely and utterly. He had wanted to keep me, but he had hurt everyone I cared about. He had wanted to make amends, but he had only caused more pain. All right, he said with a bitter laugh, tears streaming down his gaunt face. "I will let you go." He waved his hand, his voice filled with an endless weariness and despair. "All of you, stand down." The surrounding soldiers, as if granted a pardon, quickly moved aside, clearing a path to the sea. I helped my father up and, without another glance at him, led my people onto the ship that symbolized our freedom. The ship slowly set sail, leaving the harbor, heading toward the vast blue ocean. On the pier, he stood there, motionless, like a statue waiting for his wife. It was not until our ship was a small black dot on the horizon that he finally collapsed. We were gone. We had completely left that land that had brought us so much pain. Later, I heard that after I left, he fell gravely ill and nearly died. After he recovered, he dismissed his harem and deposed Meng Wanqing as crown princess, sending her back to her family. He ascended the throne and ruled with diligence, turning Great Xia into an unprecedentedly prosperous empire. He became a wise and brilliant emperor, his name remembered for generations. But he never took an empress, never had any children. He passed the throne to a nephew he had adopted from the clan. Some said he had built a Zhao-gazing terrace in the palace, where he would often sit alone, looking out at the endless eastern sea for a whole day. Others said he was constantly sending fleets out to sea, searching for a mythical island, and a woman named Yi Zhao. But he never found me again. My family and I settled on a warm island. The seasons were like spring, the birds sang, the flowers bloomed. There was no war, no intrigue. Me parents lived out their old age in peace. Li Xuan eventually found his way here. He had not pursued an official career but had inherited his father's pharmacy and become a doctor. He stayed by my side, and with his gentle, unwavering affection, he slowly healed the wounds in my heart. We never married, but we were like family, together until the end. I would often sit by the sea, watching the tides. I would think of the man named Xiao Jie. We would remember his youthful arrogance, his betrayal, and his final regret and pleading. But my heart was calm. The debts of my past life had been paid. The ties of this life had been severed. Xiao Ji, you have your vast empire, and I have my wide open sea. We have finally truly evened the score.